Tyler stirred on the couch, his eyelids fluttering open to the faint light, filtering through the blinds of his small Portland apartment. The first thing that registered wasn't the familiar hum of the city outside or the ache in his back from another night spent on the lumpy sofa. It was the sound of clinking dishes from the kitchen. He bolted upright, heart pounding as his gaze locked onto a woman standing there, her back to him, pouring coffee into a mug. She was wearing his faded blue shirt, the one he'd been searching for all week, its sleeves rolled up to her elbows, buttons undone just enough to reveal the curve of her collarbone. Who the hell are you?" Tyler's voice came out hoarse, laced with confusion and a rising edge of panic. He glanced around the room, the cluttered coffee table with Owen's toys scattered across it, the stack of unpaid bills by the lamp. Everything seemed untouched. But this stranger in his home shattered the fragile routine he'd built. The woman turned slowly, steam rising from the mug in her hand. She had dark hair tied back, messily sharp green eyes that met his without flinching, and a calm smile that only deepened his unease. "Easy there," she said softly, setting the mug down on the counter. "I'm your new neighbor, and you're the one who let me in last night." Tyler blinked, his mind racing through fragments of memory. Last night, he'd worked late at the building maintenance job, come home exhausted, read Owen a bedtime story about superheroes until the boy drifted off. Then, nothing. A blank slate. He rubbed his temples, feeling a dull throb. I don't remember any of that." She tilted her head, her expression unchanging, as if this were the most ordinary conversation. "It was pouring rain. I got lost new to the area. Knocked on doors up and down the hall. You were the only one who answered. Gave me a towel this shirt because my clothes were soaked. Even made me a sandwich. Grilled cheese, I think." His stomach twisted. Tyler wasn't the type to let strangers in, especially not women. Not since the divorce 3 years ago, when Sarah had walked out leaving him with a toddler and a shattered trust. He prided himself on being cautious, locking doors twice, avoiding eye contact in the elevator. And now this, "That doesn't sound like me," he muttered, standing up and grabbing his phone from the side table. Wallet intact, no signs of theft. The apartment was as he'd left it, cramped, lived in with Owen's drawings taped to the fridge. "I'm Morgan Carter," she said, extending a hand. Her voice was steady, almost reassuring, but there was a quiet intensity in her eyes that made him hesitate. "Just moved into 304 upstairs." He didn't take her hand, instead glancing at the shirt again. It hung loosely on her frame, the hem brushing her thighs. "Why are you wearing my shirt?" A faint, sad smile crossed her lips. "It was the only dry thing you had handy. My stuff was drenched." She paused, then added, "Look, I'm sorry if I overstepped. I'll get out of your hair." She set the mug in the sink and moved toward the door, her bare feet silent on the worn hardwood floor. "Wait," Tyler blurted, surprising himself. "Just explain." "Why don't I remember?" She stopped, hand on the doorknob, and turned back. "Maybe you were more tired than you realized, but you helped me when no one else would. And you don't remember because sometimes the best things happen when we're not fully awake to them." The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Tyler in stunned silence. He stared at the empty space where she'd stood, the scent of fresh coffee lingering in the air. Then, small footsteps padded from the hallway. Owen, his 5-year-old son, rubbed his eyes and yawned, clutching a stuffed bear. "Dad, is she still here? I want to say thanks for the story last night." Tyler spun around. "What story?" Owen grinned sleepily. "The one about you being a hero. She said you're the last good guy in the city. Read it real nice like Mom used to." Tyler's breath caught. He knelt down, pulling Owen into a hug to hide the confusion swirling in his chest. Who was this woman? And why did her presence feel like it had unlocked something he'd long forgotten? Tyler sat at his kitchen table, staring at the cooling mug of coffee Morgan had left behind. The apartment felt unnaturally quiet now, save for Owen's soft humming from his room as he played with his toys. Tyler's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the night before. He remembered the rain hammering against the windows, a knock at the door, a blurred figure in the hallway, but it all dissolved into haze. How could he have let a stranger in, especially with Owen asleep just down the hall? He shook his head, trying to shake off the unease. As the building's maintenance guy, he had access to the resident database, a perk of the job that kept him informed about who came and went in this aging Portland high-rise. Pulling out his laptop, he logged into the internal system, his fingers tapping rapidly. Morgan Carter. He typed into the search bar, filtering for Unit 304. The results loaded nothing. No record of a new tenant. The entry for 304 read simply, vacant, under maintenance. Tyler leaned back, a chill creeping up his spine. He double-checked the spelling, tried variations, Morgan Carter, M. Carter. Still nothing. The last occupant had moved out 2 months ago, and no lease had been signed since. His thoughts flashed back to the divorce. Sarah's betrayal had been swift and brutal. A note on the counter. Her bags gone, Owen crying in his crib. "I need more than this," she'd written. Since then, Tyler had built walls, no dates, no risks, just him and Owen against the world. Letting someone in literally went against everything he'd sworn to protect. Pushing the laptop aside, he grabbed his keys and headed downstairs to the lobby. Clara, the elderly front desk attendant with her perpetual cup of tea and thick glasses, looked up from her crossword puzzle. "Morning, Tyler. You look like you saw a ghost." "Clara, has anyone moved into 304 recently? A woman named Morgan," she frowned, adjusting her glasses. 304. That's the one with the leaky pipes we've been fixing. No one's in there yet. Door's not even fully installed. It's propped shut for now." "Why?" Tyler's mouth went dry. "Just checking. Thanks." He didn't wait for her response, taking the stairs 2 at a time, back up to the 3rd floor. His heart thudded in his ears as he approached the door to 304. No nameplate, no welcome mat. He knocked tentatively, once, twice. Silence. Testing the handle, he found it unlocked, swinging open with a creak. Inside the apartment was barren, bare walls with patches of fresh paint, exposed wiring from recent repairs, dust sheets over what little furniture remained from the previous tenant. No clothes, no personal items, no sign anyone had slept there. The air smelled of sawdust and emptiness. Tyler stepped in further, his boots echoing on the hardwood. "Hello," he called, but the words bounced back unanswered. Back in the hallway, he leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Who was she? A squatter, a con artist, but nothing was missing from his place, and Owen? Owen remembered her fondly. As if on cue, his phone buzzed in his pocket, an unknown number. He answered warily. "Hello. Don't worry, I'm not a ghost." Morgan's voice was calm, almost amused. "Morgan, how did you... I knew you'd look for me. Stop searching. If you see an open door someday, walk through it. Not everyone needs saving, Tyler. Sometimes it's you who does." The line went dead. Tyler stared at the phone, a mix of fear and inexplicable pull tugging at him. She knew his name. She knew he'd investigate. Standing there in the dim corridor, he felt a strange certainty this wasn't over. Morgan would return, and when she did, his carefully locked world might just crack open. The rain came down in sheets that evening, transforming Portland's streets into rivers of shimmering black under the streetlights. Tyler stood by the window, watching the water lash against the glass, his mind a whirlwind of unanswered questions. Who was Morgan Carter? Why had she vanished without a trace, leaving only echoes in Owen's stories and his own foggy recollections? He pressed his forehead to the cool pain, trying to summon the details of that night. Flashes came, the relentless downpour, a hesitant knock, a drenched figure at his door pleading for shelter. He'd let her in. Why exhaustion pity? He remembered handing her a towel, rummaging for dry clothes, even toasting bread for a sandwich as she shivered on his couch. But the rest blurred into nothing. A knock echoed through the apartment, 3 deliberate raps steady despite the storm outside. Tyler's pulse quickened. He crossed the room and opened the door. Morgan stood there, soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face, water dripping from her thin sweater onto the welcome mat. Her eyes met his weary but resolute, no trace of the calm confidence from that morning. She didn't speak at first, just stepped inside when he moved aside, trailing puddles across the floor. "I knew you wouldn't be able to sleep," she said, her voice barely above the roar of the rain. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. Tyler closed the door, grabbing a blanket from the couch and draping it over her shoulders. "Sit. I'll make tea." He busied himself in the kitchen, avoiding her gaze, but his hands trembled as he filled the kettle. When he returned with a steaming mug, she was perched on the edge of the sofa, staring into the middle distance. "Why are you here?" he asked, finally sitting across from her. "And why the hell did you disappear like that?" She cupped the mug, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. "I'm not in the resident logs because I haven't signed a lease yet." She paused, taking a sip. "I'm not planning to stay long." "Why not?" "Because I'm hiding." The words hung heavy in the air. She set the mug down, her hand steady now, but her voice cracked slightly. "From the life I built, or the one that was built for me." Tyler leaned forward, his curiosity overriding caution. "What do you mean?" Morgan drew a deep breath, as if gathering strength. "My real name is Morgan Hale, daughter of Elias Hale, the real estate developer who's turned half of Oregon into high-rises and strip malls. My mother died when I was young, and I grew up in boardrooms learning to sign eviction notices before I could drive. I've displaced hundreds of families, told myself it was just business numbers on a page." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "That night, the rain caught me off guard. I was driving aimlessly, questioning everything. Knocked on doors, people saw me through peepholes and ignored me. But you opened up, gave me your shirt, made me food, didn't ask for anything. Even let me read to your son when he woke up crying." Tyler felt a jolt. Owen's words echoed in his mind, the story about a hero, the last good man. "You told him about me." She nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "He needed comfort. And you're real. Not like the world I know where everything's a transaction." The kettle's whistle had long faded, but Tyler's heart pounded. He thought of Sarah's departure, the emptiness it left, how he'd sworn off letting anyone close. Yet here was this woman unraveling her secrets in his living room, making him feel seen in a way he hadn't in years. "Why me?" he whispered. "Because if someone like you still exists kind, without expecting payback, maybe I haven't gone too far to change." She reached out her cold fingers, brushing his hand. "But I can't stay hidden forever. Not with what's coming." Tyler didn't pull away. For the first time, the walls he'd built felt less like protection and more like a cage. Outside, the rain eased, but inside, something had shifted irrevocably. A week later, Tyler's inbox pinged with an urgent email from the building's management company, emergency resident meeting, restructuring update. His stomach knotted as he read the details: mandatory attendance for all staff and key tenants. The address was a downtown conference room, not the usual lobby gathering. He dressed quickly, dropping Owen off at daycare with a hurried kiss, his mind replaying Morgan's words from that rainy night. "Not with what's coming." What did she mean? The conference room was sleek and impersonal, filled with folding chairs and a long table lined with suited executives. Tyler slipped into a seat at the back, scanning the faces, mostly unfamiliar, a mix of property managers and residents like him. Then the door opened, and she walked in. Morgan, at least the woman he knew as Morgan, strode to the front, transformed. Gone was the vulnerable figure in a wet sweater. She wore a tailored gray suit, her hair pulled into a neat bun exuding authority. She carried a tablet and a stack of folders, her green eyes sharp as she surveyed the room. Tyler froze, his breath catching. She hadn't mentioned this, hadn't hinted at any of it. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady and commanding. "I'm Morgan Hale, interim CEO of Hale Developments. Thank you for coming on short notice." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Tyler's mind reeled. Hale Developments, the company that owned his building, the one notorious for aggressive expansions and evictions. Her father, Elias Hale, was a name whispered in dread among low-income renters, and she was his daughter. Morgan tapped her tablet, projecting a slide onto the screen: Human-Centered Restructuring Plan, Phase 1. "I know many of you are wary," she continued. "Our company's history hasn't always prioritized people over profits. I've been part of that, signing off on decisions that displaced families, treating lives like line items." Her voice faltered slightly, a flicker of the vulnerability he'd seen before. Tyler flashed back to her confession on his couch, the boardrooms, the evictions, the emptiness of it all. Her mother gone too soon, leaving her in a world of cold calculations. She clicked to the next slide, a collage of photos from the building, elderly tenants chatting in the lobby, kids playing in the courtyard, and There in the center, a candid shot of him, and Owen fixing a bike on the steps. Tyler's face burned. How had she gotten that starting today? Morgan declared, "Things change. No more automatic evictions, no arbitrary rent hikes. Every case will be reviewed by a human team considering jobs, families, hardships." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. "This isn't charity. It's sustainability. Buildings thrive when people do." A burly director in the front row shot to his feet, face reddening. "This is madness. You're turning us into a nonprofit. The board won't stand for it. Your father built this company on growth, not handouts." Morgan met his glare unflinchingly. "My father built it on fear. I'm rebuilding it on fairness. If the board disagrees, they can find a new CEO." The room erupted in whispers. Tyler watched his initial shock giving way to something deeper, admiration. She'd returned to this world not to hide, but to dismantle it from within. As the meeting wrapped, Morgan's eyes found his in the back. "Questions?" she asked the group, but her focus lingered on him. Tyler stood his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Why now?" She smiled faintly, the professional mask slipping just enough for him to see the real her. "Because someone showed me there's still good in the world, and it's worth fighting for." The words hung between them, a silent bridge over the chaos. Tyler nodded, his heart swelling with a mix of pride and possibility. Whatever came next, he knew she wasn't just changing the company, she was changing everything. Spring arrived early in Portland that year, blanketing the city in a soft haze of blooming cherry blossoms and warmer days. Tyler's life had settled into a rhythm he hadn't known in years. Steady work as the building's lead maintenance supervisor, complete with benefits and enough hours to cover the bills without overtime eating into his time with Owen. The boy dashed through the communal courtyard below, laughing with other kids, no longer glancing worriedly at eviction notices taped to doors. Those had stopped coming thanks to the reforms sweeping through Hale Developments. Morgan had moved into Unit 304 properly now, with a signed lease and boxes of her own belongings filling the once empty space. No more hiding, no more vanishing acts. She'd stepped fully into the light, balancing her role at the company with quiet evenings in the building she was helping transform. One twilight evening, Tyler and Morgan sat on his balcony, the city lights flickering to life below like distant stars. Owen was inside, absorbed in a drawing at the kitchen table, giving them a rare moment alone. Morgan leaned against the railing, her suit from the day replaced by a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. "Do you resent me for hiding who I was?" she asked softly, her eyes searching his. Tyler shook his head, taking her hand. "If I'd known that first night, I might not have opened the door. Fear would have won." He squeezed her fingers, feeling the warmth that had thawed his guarded heart. "But you showed me there's more to people than their pasts." She smiled, a genuine one that reached her eyes. "And you showed me kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing there is." Owen burst out, then clutching a crayon masterpiece, a stick figure family under a rainbow. "Look, it's us." He thrust it into Morgan's hands, then wrapped his arms around her waist. "Will you read to me tonight?" Morgan knelt to his level, pulling him into a hug. "Of course, buddy. Heroes and all." As Owen scampered back inside, Tyler watched her, his chest tightening with emotion. He thought back to that stormy night, her at his door, drenched and desperate. The sandwich he'd made without thinking. Her voice soothing Owen's nightmares. And further to her confessions on the couch, the weight of a life built on evictions and empty luxury. She'd changed not just for him, but because of him, because one act of uncalculated goodwill had cracked her world open. In the quiet that followed, Tyler reflected on it all. Life had a way of locking doors we didn't even know we'd closed. After Sarah left, he'd bolted his heart shut, convinced safety meant solitude. But Morgan's arrival, mysterious, unsettling, had pried it ajar. Not everyone who entered was there to take. Some came to give, to heal, to remind you that trust wasn't foolish. It was brave. He realized, staring at the horizon, that true connections weren't about perfect timing or spotless histories. They were about opening up when it hurt, about seeing beyond facades to the vulnerabilities beneath. Morgan had hidden her wealth, her power, but in doing so, she'd revealed her soul. And in letting her in literally and figuratively, Tyler had found not just love, but a second chance at family. Owen adored her, calling her stories magic, man, and Tyler, well, his heart beat stronger now, not from fear, but from the quiet joy of sharing his world. As the stars emerged, Tyler stood and pulled Morgan close. "No more locked doors," he murmured. She nodded against his shoulder. "None." That night, with Owen tucked in and Morgan's voice weaving tales from the bedside, Tyler lingered in the doorway. He understood a truth he'd long ignored: not every stranger was a threat. Some were lifelines disguised as disruptions. And in a world quick to judge and quicker to isolate, opening up to kindness, to change, to love was the real heroism. It didn't always come with capes or fanfare. Sometimes it started with a knock in the rain, a borrowed shirt, and the courage to let someone stay.